At the beginning of the movie, we meet a wandering swordsman sleeping on the roadside in the forest. His name is Seizu, and while he is enjoying his sleep, he is suddenly disturbed by a girl. She suddenly falls onto Seizu. Seeing that she is covered in scrapes, he realizes that she is being pursued. Seizu is then discovered by the assassins who are chasing the girl. Even though he has no intention of helping her, the assassins still want to kill him to silence any witnesses, so he has no choice but to carry the girl and start using his own skills. They shoot poison needles at Seizu, but he spins his weapon at an extremely fast speed to block and deflect the needles back toward the assassins. He realizes that if he leaves the girl behind, she will become the target of these people. But he does not care because he is hungry and does not want to waste his energy on matters like this. The girl runs up and begs him to help her because she does not know how to deal with the assassins if they appear again. He does not want to help her, which makes her think that he is heartless and has no compassion. But he bluntly says that he just helped her and did not even receive a single thank you. So why should he risk his life to protect her and gain nothing in return? So, the girl decides to treat him to a meal if he helps her reach a certain place. While eating ramen, Seizu quickly notices that this girl eats an incredible amount. He has not even finished one bowl of ramen, yet she has already eaten nearly 10. The girl then introduces herself as Izanami. She thanks Seizu for saving her life and also believes that he is a kind person because he chose to save her instead of abandoning her. He thinks that he simply did not want her to die meaninglessly and also did not want to hear her shouting for help. Izanami says that when he carried her, she felt very safe because she believed that Seizu would help protect her. Seizu then says that if she has finished eating, she should quickly leave. He then reminds Izanami to adjust her hairpin. He also notices that her hairpin seems somewhat strange. Seizu then continues traveling with her until the evening. He leads her to a relatively safe area and tells her that the place she needs to go is just ahead. As long as she does not attract attention, she will be safe. But she still wants Seizu to accompany her a bit further because she cannot enter the city by herself. Seizu thinks that the city is full of trouble, so he will not follow her any longer. Suddenly, an owl flies by, and a strange man appears and asks who they are and where they come from. Izanami says that she is a shrine maiden of a person named Izumo. The stranger wonders why a shrine maiden would be traveling with an assassin from the Iga clan. Seizu realizes that the opponent is a ninja from the rival Koga clan, so he rushes in to attack. The man in blue retreats and introduces himself as Saritobai, the leader of Lord Sanada's ninja force. Since both of them hate ninjas from rival factions, they charge at each other without thinking too much about the reason. Seizu becomes too focused on chasing Saritobai and gets lured into a trap of poisonous leaves. He then falls into the trap. Saritobai quickly lunges to finish him off, but Seizu uses a substitution technique to deceive Saritobai and suddenly attacks. Saritobai manages to dodge in time and asks who Seizu's master is, but Seizu does not like serving anyone. Izanami then steps in to stop them because she needs to meet Saritobai's master, Lord Sanada. When they finally enter the city, Seizu thinks that Izanami must be very happy because she has reached the place she wanted to go. But he notices that Izanami does not seem happy at all. She then meets Lord Sanada. Izanami quickly pleads with Sanada to help her temple, Izumo, because her entire shrine was engulfed in flames. All she can remember is that the entire shrine was massacred by an assassin, and one of her senior brothers sacrificed himself, using magic to help her escape while instructing her to find Sanada. But even after escaping alone, she was still pursued by assassins, and if Seizu had not helped her, she would have died. Seizu realizes that this story is too cruel for a girl who has never experienced war. Sanada then asks what she needs his help with. If it is revenge, he refuses because he does not want to be involved. Sanada will let her stay for the night, and tomorrow, whether she wants to leave or stay is up to her, he will not interfere. Seizu then prepares to leave, but Izanami hugs him and cries. She cannot bear the feeling of being the only survivor, escaping here only to be able to do nothing. Shortly after, Seizu still leaves, but Izanami chases after him. Izanami does not know what to do tomorrow, so she wants to follow Seizu. He notices that she is trembling and tells her to go back because following him will be useless. Izanami then decides to lie down and throw a tantrum there, not caring if she gets eaten by wolves. Seizu reminds her again that he is not a good person, and whether she dies here has nothing to do with him. He does not care. At that moment, chains suddenly bind both of them. Seizu did not expect these assassins to be hiding so well. Just then, Sanada and Sarutobi arrive. Seizu realizes that these two deliberately used him and Izanami as bait to lure out the assassins. However, Sanada also knows that Seizu would not easily lose to weaklings like these. Seizu does not bother hiding anymore and simply breaks the chains, unleashing a single attack that takes down the assassins in one move. But right after that, he notices that Izanami's hairpin suddenly releases a dark sphere that drains the life from everything it touches. Seizu moves to check if Izanami is okay, but another assassin charges at him, forcing him to take him down before the sphere activates again. Izanami later regains consciousness and does not remember what happened. She thinks Seizu saved her and once again sees him as a good person. Meanwhile, Sanada is now certain that the assassins are targeting Izanami because of her hairpin. Izanami then asks Sanada to let Seizu stay, even though he does not want to. Izanami insists that since she treated him to ramen, he must help her. Sanada and Sarutobi also believe that Seizu owes Izanami a favor, so he has no choice but to continue helping her if he does not want to lose his honor. That night, Seizu secretly hides in the ceiling to eavesdrop on Sanada's plans. He learns that Sanada intends to recruit 10 talented individuals to rise up and seize the land. However, Sanada's subordinate, Rokiru, discovers him and attacks. Seizu manages to escape back to his room, but the impact of the sonic attack puts him to sleep. The next morning, Seizu wakes up and finds that Izanami has snuck into his room again to sleep beside him. Sarutobi arrives with food for Seizu, but the Sanada ninjas attack him to punish him for daring to sleep with Izanami. As a result, Seizu loses his breakfast. Meanwhile, the lord who is hunting Izanami orders the assassin who attacked the shrine to go capture Izanami from Sanada's place and bring her back. The next morning, Izanami asks Seizu to help her choose an outfit because there is an upcoming festival where she has to perform a dance. Seizu randomly picks one and then runs away, making Izanami furious. While hiding in the forest, Seizu accidentally encounters a girl bathing by a waterfall. The girl quickly turns the water into ice and attacks him, but he recognizes her as Anna, his childhood friend. Anna is delighted to see Seizu again. Seizu asks about her situation and learns that Anna is now serving Sanada. She reveals that she once tried to assassinate him but failed. However, instead of punishing her, Sanada kindly invited her to stay, so she had no choice but to accept. Izanami and Sanada soon arrive as well. Sanada asks Anna about the situation outside the city. She reports that there are widespread rumors of a giant serpent causing havoc nearby. Sanada believes that Sarutobi will handle it. More importantly, the festival is about to begin, so he wants Izanami to be ready. During the festival, Sanada raises a toast with the people to celebrate a bountiful harvest. Anna notices that Seizu seems jealous of Sanada. She believes that Seizu does not yet understand what it feels like to have a master worth devoting himself to. Seizu insists that he simply enjoys his freedom and wants to do whatever he pleases. Anna remarks that someone like Seizu, without any burdens tying him down, will just keep wandering endlessly. Seizu then decides to leave instead of watching Izanami perform. He does not care for such things, so he wanders around. Seeing that Seizu has left, Izanami rushes to finish her performance and chases after him. Anna thought that the two were hunting the giant serpent, but despite her fear, Izanami stubbornly insisted on following, forcing Anna to leave first. At that moment, Izanami sensed the eerie presence of the forest ahead and decided to venture inside with Seizu to investigate. Both of them noticed that the forest was unusually dark and ominous. Soon after, a giant serpent appeared and attacked them. Seizu quickly pulled Izanami away, but she fainted from fear. The serpent crushed a tree, causing both of them to fall. Seizu ended up pinned under the serpent, and while Izanami tried to help, he warned her to stay back to avoid putting herself in danger. Using his last explosive tube, Seizu forced the serpent to retreat just enough for him to break free. He also realized that the serpent was being controlled by someone. Seizu then leaped forward and stabbed the serpent in the eye, but it unexpectedly exploded, burying both him and Izanami under rubble. Izanami managed to find Seizu and tend to his wounds from the explosion. When he questioned why she remained so optimistic, she replied that she felt safe because he was by her side. To her, Seizu was the light that saved her. When she was being hunted from the shrine until now, he was the only one who chose to help her. However, Seizu saw himself only as a killer, someone who existed in darkness and took lives. His act of saving her was purely coincidental. Despite this, Izanami's perception of him remained unchanged. Seizu figured that her parents must have been kind people, but Izanami revealed that she had been abandoned in front of the shrine as a child and was raised by her older brother figure, who took care of and taught her everything. Sadly, he lost his life protecting her, and now she wished to rely on Seizu. Seizu then extinguished the fire and noticed smoke drifting in a certain direction, indicating an opening. He decided to break through the ground in that direction to escape, knowing that if he failed, both of them would be buried alive. Izanami chose to trust him, and thanks to his efforts, they successfully escaped. As soon as they emerged, Seizu discovered that Sanada's fortress was under attack and rushed back. At that moment, Sanada was organizing the evacuation of the townspeople, while Sarutobi encountered another giant serpent and the one controlling it. The woman introduced herself as Aokatsu and warned Sarutobi to be careful if he didn't want the serpent to explode. Sarutobi charged at her, but she dodged and commanded the serpent to bite him. Poison, Sarutobi's vision blurred, but before the serpent could do more damage, Anna froze and defeated it. She then froze the surface of the water to launch an attack on Aokatsu, but the woman countered by summoning a swarm of snakes, which Sarutobi swiftly cut down. Realizing she was at a disadvantage, Aokatsu tried to flee, but Sarutobi pursued her into the depths of the forest, his own domain. Meanwhile, Izanami was helping civilians escape when she was suddenly found by the same assassin who had attacked the shrine before. His name was Hanzu, and he demanded that she come with him. Seizu arrived just in time to stop him. He charged forward, but Hanzu threw a barrage of kunai at his back. However, it was just an illusion. Seizu's real body was behind Hanzu. Although Hanzu managed to block the attack, he still landed a strike on Seizu's forehead, seeing through his technique. At the same time, Sanada and Rokiru had been captured and tied up by 4 assassins. Rokiru used his ultrasonic scream to take down 2 enemies in front, while Sanada dealt with one behind him. Hanzu mocked Seizu, stating that the so-called prodigy ninja of the Iga clan had fallen to such a pathetic state. Seizu continued to take hits, his body covered in wounds. When Hanzu tried to take Izanami away, Seizu stood up once more. As Hanzu lunged for the final blow, Seizu used another illusion to return to Izanami's side and struck Hanzu. Anna and Sarutobi arrived, forcing Hanzu to retreat. Afterward, Seizu finally collapsed from his injuries and was quickly taken away for treatment. Sanada was furious that the festival had been ruined and vowed not to show mercy in the upcoming battle. Later, Sanada requested that Seizu escort Izanami back to the shrine, but Seizu refused. This angered a man who had been standing nearby. Seizu questioned who he was, and the man introduced himself as Juzu, one of Sanada's subordinates. The reason Sanada wanted Seizu to take Izanami back was because Juzu had discovered that. After massacring the entire temple, the assassins remained at the scene searching for something rather important. Since they couldn't find it, they pursued the only survivor, Izanami. Sanada suspected that what the enemy was looking for was still in the temple, so he wanted Seizu to take Izanami back there to uncover what that important item was. Izanami overheard and insisted on going, leaving Seizu with no way to escape. Sir Tobai gave Izanami an owl to send messages, and Juzu called for Izanami and Seizu to set off quickly. Seizu realized he was about to embark on a journey with two loud companions, but there was no way out now. On the way, Juzu remarked that Izanami was too flirtatious, wearing such revealing clothing. She countered that Anna dressed similarly, forcing Juzu to explain the difference between the two. Of course, Izanami didn't bother listening. That night, Izanami once again insisted on sleeping next to Seizu, prompting Juzu to pull Seizu aside for a private talk. He wanted to know if Seizu and Izanami were married, but Seizu replied that he had no feelings for her, she was just childish and shameless. Juzu also wondered why Sanada recognized Izanami as a warrior. It made sense for Seizu, but Izanami was clearly just an ordinary woman. Seizu already knew about Izanami's hidden power, but chose not to reveal it. The next morning, as the group resumed their journey, Seizu found it odd that they hadn't encountered a single person passing by. They soon came across a woman sitting near a suspension bridge. Believing she was in trouble, Izanami approached her and decided to have Seizu help her cross the bridge. Though he found it troublesome, Seizu complied. As they stepped onto the bridge, he realized Juzu had a fear of heights. At that moment, the woman revealed her true nature, conjuring a gust of wind to restrain Seizu and capture Izanami. He introduced himself as Yuri, the leader of a band of thieves. Recognizing Seizu as a formidable opponent, he restrained him first to make the robbery easier. However, Juzu unexpectedly pulled out a gun and shot down the bandits, forcing Yuzi to take things seriously. Yuzi then brandished a chain sickle, spinning it to block bullets. Once the gunfire ceased, he decided to take Izanami away. Seizu unsheathed his sword and sliced through the wind, restraining him. Without hesitation, Yuzi lunged at him, initiating a fierce battle. Upon noticing Seizu's concern for Izanami, Yuzi cut the bridge, causing Seizu to plunge into the river below. Managing to reach the shore, Seizu reunited with Juzu, and they immediately pursued Izanami's captor. Yuzi, having grown bored of stealing money, waited at his hideout for Seizu to arrive. He planned to torment Izanami in front of him for his own twisted pleasure. Izanami tried to resist, but was ruthlessly beaten. When Seizu finally arrived, he found her tied to a tree. He swiftly jumped up to confront Yuzi, who attempted to push him off again, but Seizu held on. Leaping back up, he refused to be knocked down a second time. The two clashed fiercely, and Seizu slashed Yuzi, wounding him. Yuzi claimed that Seizu was just like him, an emotionless killer who knew nothing but bloodlust. In response, Seizu unleashed his ultimate technique, severing Yuzi's weapon and inflicting a severe injury. Accepting defeat, Yuzi urged Seizu to kill him to prove his true nature. Seizu was about to deliver the final blow when Izanami ran between them, stopping his sword. She refused to let him strike down someone who could no longer fight back. More importantly, she assured Seizu that she was fine and not severely injured, so there was no need for further punishment. Listening to her, Seizu lowered his sword and took Izanami away, leaving Yuzi behind for the authorities to capture. Enraged, Yuzi screamed, attempting to provoke Seizu into finishing him off, but Seizu ignored him and continued walking away. That afternoon, Juzu treated Izanami's wounds. He told her that she had truly saved Seizu, though she didn't quite understand after all. She believed he was the one who had saved her. Meanwhile, Sanada ordered Rokaru to memorize a letter and deliver its contents to a feudal lord. To ensure secrecy, Sanada burned the letter after dictating it. The next morning, Seizu's group successfully returned to Izanami's ruined temple. Upon arriving at the gate, Juzu suggested that the three of them split up to search. Seizu still had no idea what they were looking for, but Juzu told him to carefully examine anything that seemed suspicious. Izanami felt deep sorrow upon returning, yet she put on a strong front and insisted on helping with the search. Juzu asked Seizu to follow her just to be safe. As Izanami wandered through the temple, memories of playing with everyone there resurfaced. Seizu approached to check on her, but she asked him to leave her alone. He found it strange, as she usually clung to him without fail. Finally, she admitted her true feelings and shared her sorrow with him. Seizu handed her a handkerchief to wipe her tears and reminded her that they had come here to uncover the truth behind what had happened. He urged her not to grieve too much. Those who had passed could not return, and what was lost could not be undone. The best way to honor the dead now was to uncover the truth. Suddenly, a gunshot rang out, prompting Seizu to rush to Juzu, but there was nothing there. Juzu had merely fired his gun as a signal that he had found nothing. Seizu then noticed that everything had been burned down except for a bronze pillar. Thinking it might hold some significance, he examined it closely. Jumping up, he noticed that the symbol beneath his feet resembled something he had seen in a drawing before. It seemed to be flipped and needed to be rearranged. Juzu attempted to lift one of the stones but couldn't. However, Izanami recalled that the pieces could be rotated. She began turning them, starting from the center, until she completed the Bagua symbol. As the formation was completed, a hidden underground passageway opened. The three of them followed the path until they reached a dead end. Just when it seemed like they had hit a wall, Izanami noticed ancient inscriptions on the stone. None of them could read the text, but before they could ponder further, Hanzu and Aokatsu appeared. Hanzu demanded that they hand over both Izanami and her hairpin. At that moment, Izanami realized that the item the enemy had been searching for had been with her all along. Her hairpin, a gift from her senior monk. Neither side was willing to back down, and a fierce battle broke out. Aokatsu unleashed a swarm of snakes. Seizu quickly warned Juzu not to kill them recklessly, as they would explode upon death. Taking advantage of the distraction, Aokatsu captured Juzu. Seizu was once again left to fight Hanzu alone, while protecting the burden known as Izanami. She remained in shock, realizing that she was the reason everyone in the temple had been killed. Once again, Seizu found himself a step behind Hanzu, allowing him to land multiple strikes. The only thing Seizu managed to do was counter with a single blow. Meanwhile, Juzu was tightly restrained and about to be tortured. Just then, a sudden gust of wind tore through the snake cage and pushed Hanzu back. The one responsible was none other than Yuzi. He declared that only he was allowed to harm Seizu, and only Seizu had the right to kill him. Despite his bold words, Yuzi was immediately beaten to a pulp in their duel. Seizu advised him that if he didn't want to die, he should lend a hand. If they survived this battle, Seizu promised to duel him whenever he wanted. Thrilled by the offer, Yuzi agreed. At the same time, Juzu slowly broke free and turned the tide. However, he was quickly restrained again. In a desperate move, he aimed his gun at himself and fired. The bullet passed through his body and struck Aokatsu, killing her. Meanwhile, Seizu and Yuzi successfully took down Hanzu together. Upon returning to the surface, Izanami tended to their wounds. She still blamed herself, but Seizu told her to stop. The one at fault was the hairpin, not her. Suddenly, a man on horseback stormed through and snatched Izanami away. He introduced himself as Munasame, a feudal lord allied with Sanada. However, he declared that the three of them should return and inform Sanada that he had taken possession of the very thing Sanada had been seeking. Long ago, Seizu had a close friend, the only person he was willing to bow to and call his master, should that person ever become a feudal lord. However, the fate of a ninja was to be treated as nothing more than a tool, discarded the moment they lost their value. The immense loss changed Seizu's path. He chose to kill in order to survive and vowed never to bow to anyone again. When he regained consciousness, he found himself in a forest. Juzu was preparing to return and report to Sanada, but Seizu decided to abandon it all, as he no longer had any obligation to continue. Besides, he had never considered Sanada his master in the first place. Juzu believed that Seizu was just running away and told him to go wherever he pleased. Juzu would still go back and report. At that moment, Sanada was sitting with others, waiting for news. Sarutobi noticed a returning owl carrying a piece of paper, which he took and read. At first, Sanada assumed they were requesting additional travel funds, but his expression quickly darkened after reading the letter. He immediately ordered Sarutobi and Anna to retrieve Izanami at all costs. Meanwhile, Izanami was imprisoned, refusing to eat or speak. No matter what Munasama asked her, she would only respond with her name. When he stepped out, the power of her hairpin flared up, but it wasn't enough to help her escape. She had begun to understand her own strength, and she was terrified of it. One of Munasama's subordinates asked him about the hairpin, and it was then revealed that, long ago, due to human hatred and conflict, 4 weapons had been created. The hairpin was one of them. With its power, Munasama intended to challenge all the other lords and reshape the world. Sarutobi and Anna lay in wait for the right moment to infiltrate, but they were discovered by enemy forces. However, the soldiers stood no chance against those chosen by Sanada and were swiftly defeated. Sarutobi advanced first, leaving Anna behind to handle the rest. Sarutobi located Izanami's cell, but she refused to leave, believing she only brought misfortune and suffering to those around her. Meanwhile, Anna was captured. The soldiers planned to take turns enjoying her, but she caught sight of a hidden signal Sarutobi had sent via the owl. Realizing that Izanami wasn't cooperating, Anna dropped her act and launched a barrage of razor-sharp ice spikes, killing the soldiers instantly. Anna then went to Izanami and confronted her, saying that all she was doing was running from reality. She urged Izanami to face it head-on because she was not weak. Anna believed in her because she was a warrior chosen by Sanada. Hearing these words of encouragement from her senior, Izanami regained her resolve. She apologized to Sarutobi for what she had said earlier, but he didn't mind. None of them held on to such wounds. Izanami was brought back to Sanada's castle. Less than a day later, Seizu's group also returned. Sanada assured them that the matter had already been handled. Sanada then had a meeting with Yusi. Regretfully, he informed Yusi that he could not allow him to fight Seizu. Furious, Yusi lunged at him, forcing Rokuro to intervene. Yet Sanada remained cheerful, having seen through Yusi's nature and successfully persuaded him to stay. Since his return, Seizu had been avoiding Izanami, making her visibly sad. In truth, Seizu was ashamed and disappointed in himself for failing to protect her, despite the trust she had placed in him. Sarutobi, noticing Seizu's dejected state, kicked him off the rooftop. He openly criticized Seizu's current weakness, calling him someone who didn't know how to persevere, someone who gave up too easily, a coward who wasn't worthy of being a man. Though furious, Seizu, in his current mindset, was unable to land a hit on Sarutobi. In the end, Sarutobi extended a hand and pulled him up. He wanted Seizu to change because they needed his strength. Sanada had witnessed the entire scene, making Sarutobi flustered and run off. Sanada then asked Seizu what his decision would be. Would he rise above himself or tuck his tail and run like a coward? Seizu stood up defiantly, telling Sanada not to underestimate him. Sanada then noticed that Izanami had found her own answer. She ran toward Seizu and hugged him, overjoyed at his return. That night, Murasame was furious about losing Izanami, so he decided to pay Sanada a visit. Meanwhile, Sanada ordered everyone to report on what had happened at the temple. When the ancient inscriptions were mentioned, Sanada had Rokuro use the power of his eye to decode them. Sanada didn't allow anyone else to see, and Seizu's memory of those inscriptions was copied so Rokuro could decipher them. Sanada only stated that it was a congratulatory message for making it there and dismissed everyone. He strictly forbade Rokuro from revealing the truth about the inscriptions to anyone and even burned the scroll. Sanada then decided to leave everything in Seizu's hands, as he had been the one to influence Izanami the most from the start. The next morning, the group noticed that Sanada and Rokuro were nowhere to be found and began to worry. Sartobi arrived and informed them that both had left the castle at dawn, leaving behind a letter. In it, Sanada wrote that he and Rokuro had suddenly wanted to visit a hot spring, so they had gone ahead. He left a map and told them to meet him there. Upon arrival, everyone ended up scattered in different places. Seizu had to go search for Izanami. On his way, he unexpectedly saw Juzu being thrown out of a restaurant. The one responsible was a monk. Juzu explained that this man had eaten without paying and even resorted to violence. The man introduced himself as Miyoshi, a monk, but his reasoning was absurd. He claimed that the restaurant owner should be honored to serve a devout traveler like him. In other words, he had no money and no shame, forcing others to provide for him. He stated that he was searching for his lost sister, but Seizu insisted that she wasn't there. Strangely, Miyoshi was extremely gullible. The moment Seizu said that, he immediately left. Thinking the problem was solved, Juzu pulled out his gun, determined to regain his honor and force Miyoshi to compensate for the damages. However, Miyoshi disliked having a gun pointed at him and casually bent Juzu's gun with one hand. The devastation from this loss left Juzu in shock, unsure of what to do. Seizu had to pull him aside and throw shurikens in retaliation. Not only was Miyoshi completely unharmed, but Seizu's weapons bounced off his skin. Yuzi quickly arrived to help. Seizu warned him to release his chains since this opponent had monstrous strength. Yuzi was flung around, forcing Sartobi to step in as well. Miyoshi viewed this as a divine challenge and agreed to fight them all as part of his training. Anna arrived too but refused to join the battle, saying that Miyoshi looked too filthy. Sanada and Rokuro, noticing the commotion in the streets, realized that their subordinates had arrived. Sanada was intrigued to see Seizu single-handedly coordinating everyone like a leader. However, Yuzi was the first to get beaten down. Sasuke tried stabbing Miyoshi but couldn't pierce his thick skin. Once Saratobi retreated, Seizu stepped in. Using Saratobi's leg as a platform, he leaped onto Miyoshi's head, where even gods and spirits could be harmed or even killed. Accepting this as proof, Miyoshi agreed to stop fighting. Just then, Izanami arrived, having just won an eating contest and bringing her prize back for everyone. Miyoshi immediately recognized her as his sister, even calling her by name. However, Izanami had no recollection of him and mistook him for a pervert. Seeing her close to Seizu, Miyoshi did what any older brother would. He tried to beat up Seizu. Seizu quickly took advantage of the situation and had Izanami order Miyoshi around. She commanded him not to attack Seizu or anyone else and to fix everything he had damaged. In return, she would agree to sit down and listen to him. After settling everything, the group headed to an inn. Miyoshi revealed that he wasn't Izanami's biological brother, but was the one who had found her on the temple steps. When he was 15, he had traveled the world and changed a lot. However, he recognized Izanami thanks to the hairpin she wore. He even showed an old picture of himself, and Izanami finally remembered him. Sanada seized this opportunity to recruit Miyoshi as his subordinate, intending to utilize his immense strength. At night, the group decided to soak in the hot springs together. Sanada wanted to use this opportunity to find out Yuzi's true gender, but since Yuzi disliked him, he chose to bathe in the river instead. While Seizu was eating, he noticed animal fur everywhere and immediately confronted Saratobi for letting a bunch of animals into the bath area. Saratobi wanted Sanada to mediate, but he had already slipped away. A little while later, Sanada was suddenly seen on the women's side. Hearing Izanami's scream, Miyoshi jumped over, only for Anna to freeze the entire spring in response. Yuzi, having just finished bathing in the river, caught a cold, his nose turning red. Seizu told him to get some rest since bathing in the river to the point of getting sick was ridiculous. Yuzi, feeling that Seizu was being too affectionate, denied everything and ran off. Along the way, he happened to pick up Saratobi's weasel and held onto it for warmth. Yuzi then admitted that he felt very strange whenever he was near Seizu. His heart would beat fast, and he couldn't stop thinking about him. At this point, everyone was seriously confused about Yuzi's true gender. After confessing, Yuzi suddenly realized that Saratobi had been there the whole time. Noticing how soft the weasel's fur was, Yuzi thought about killing it for warmth, causing Saratobi to scream in panic. The next morning, Sanada received a summons from the other lords. He realized that the time had come for the beasts to bare their fangs. The following day, Sanada suddenly ordered Rokuro, Seizu, and Izanami to accompany him to the capital. The others were to stay behind and wait for news. Yuzi was against it, saying that he would be bored without Seizu around. Sanada demanded silence from everyone. On the way, Izanami was as loud and clingy towards Seizu as always. Rokuro wondered who would be attending the meeting this time. Sanada listed a few names, with the most notable being Masamune. At that moment, Masamune was dressing as extravagantly as possible for the meeting. His flashy attire meant to display his power and leave a strong impression on Sanada. Masamune was well aware that the person targeting Izanami's hairpin was a lord named Iyasu. To mislead him, Masamune planned to spread a rumor claiming that the hairpin had no actual power. He would then stage a performance convincing enough to deceive Iyasu. Meanwhile, Sanada's group stopped by a tavern for a meal before continuing on their way. Unexpectedly, a young boy approached them, asking if they were heading to the Lord's meeting. If so, the road ahead had collapsed and was impassable. The boy pointed them to an alternative route, prompting Izanami to give him a piece of candy as thanks. However, Seizu suddenly caught the scent of gunpowder on the boy. Shortly after, he noticed that Izanami had dozed off, finding her far too carefree. Sanada told him to relax since they weren't being pursued at the moment. But Seizu disagreed after all. They were traveling with someone the entire world was hunting. Sanada, on the other hand, found taking Izanami along rather entertaining. That said, bringing only 3 people seemed too few, though he disliked traveling with too many people since it would be too conspicuous. Suddenly, a firework shot into the sky, startling the horses and making them lose control. One horse stepped into a hidden trap, triggering a barrage of bamboo stakes aimed at Rokuro. Seizu rushed to his aid just in time, but an avalanche of rocks began tumbling down from the mountains. At that moment, Miyoshi arrived and smashed the falling rocks apart. No one expected him to have followed them all the way here. Out of nowhere, a rock was shot at the horse's leg, causing it to panic and take off, carrying Izanami with it. Sanada chased after her to rescue her, but his horse stepped into another trap, nearly sending him plummeting into a pit, if not for Rokuro saving him in time. Seizu then rushed to save Izanami, but he accidentally triggered another trap, releasing a barrage of cannonballs. However, a sudden gust of wind blew them all into the sky. As expected, 2 people had refused to stay behind at the hot springs and had followed them here. In the end, the group remained unharmed. The young boy from earlier reappeared, surprised that they had managed to bypass all his traps. Seizu realized that the gunpowder scent he had noticed earlier had come from these traps. The boy then requested to serve under Sanada, revealing that the traps had been a test to find a worthy master. Seizu refused to accept a boy who had just nearly killed the entire group, rejecting him outright and telling him to return to his family. However, the boy had no family. He had survived entirely on his own. Sanada then asked for the boy's name, and he answered that his name was also Rokuro. Since they shared the same name, Sanada decided to rename him Benmaru. Rokuro objected, saying that it was Sanada's childhood name, but once Sanada made a decision, no one could change it. Sanada then instructed the boy to wait for him at the tavern they had just visited until he returned, as he couldn't take the boy into the capital at the moment. As for the 2 people who had secretly followed them, there was no point in sending them back now since they would just continue sneaking around, so they might as well travel together. The group resumed their journey and soon arrived at the capital. Of course, the highlight of the capital was still Masamune, flaunting his extravagant attire. Upon arriving at his lodging, Masamune received an official order from the capital. This order applied to all lords and their retainers, a temporary ban on carrying swords. Sanada wasn't particularly concerned about it, but he did worry about the two brainless ones, Yuzi and Miyoshi. He and Rokaru then proceeded to the meeting, where they encountered two other lords. The first was Lord Ishida, who had previously warned Sanada about Iyasu's schemes, how Iyasu was trying to incite war and manipulate the lords for his own gain. Since the death of the regent, Iyasu had become increasingly shameless, and this meeting was likely just another opportunity for him to flaunt his power. Another lord, Nea, agreed and began bad-mouthing Iyasu. However, Sanada advised both of them to remain calm, reminding them that they were there not only for the meeting, but also to enjoy a tea ceremony. Meanwhile, two of Masamune's subordinates happened to spot Izanami on the street, but they couldn't make a move against her due to the sword ban. The meeting finally began, and Masamune arrived late. Unexpectedly, he drew his sword, claiming that he wanted to put on a performance to make up for his tardiness. He then invited Sanada to join him in a demonstration, with his retainers ready to lend Sanada a sword if needed. However, Sanada chose to perform using only his fan. During the match, Sanada effortlessly dodged Masamune's sword strikes. Frustrated, Masamune attempted to land a hit, but Sanada either deliberately or by accident ended up kicking Masamune's sword, sending it flying straight toward Iyasu's face. The lords erupted into laughter, while Iyasu had never been more humiliated. Masamune, meanwhile, was clearly irritated by Sanada's playful attitude. That evening, as they were leaving, Sanada was suddenly approached by Iyasu's subordinates, who ordered him to wait for further instructions. The other two lords realized that Iyasu was targeting Sanada and would likely try to punish him for his actions today. However, Sanada simply ignored it. Later, Masamune was surprised to hear that Izanami was also in the capital. That night, Iyasu's soldiers raided Sanada's lodging, but he and his group had already left long before. They managed to cross a bridge, leaving Iyasu's men behind. Yuzi summoned a gust of wind, sweeping the soldiers off the bridge, while Miyoshi shattered the entire bridge to cut off their pursuit. Sanada felt justified in bringing Izanami along. Shortly after, Masamune went to meet Iyasu. Furious at his humiliation, Iyasu blamed Masamune for it. However, since he couldn't punish Masamune directly, he ordered him to take care of Sanada instead. The next morning, as Sanada's group traveled back, they were suddenly pursued by Iyasu's soldiers. Seizu and Yuzi were tasked with blocking their path, but Benmaru had already set up traps in advance, eliminating the pursuers with ease. Sanada found it suspicious that the enemy had caught up so quickly, so he ordered Seizu and Yuzi to scout ahead while he and the others rested by a stream. Noticing that Izanami seemed worried, Sanada draped his cloak over her and reassured her that Seizu would be fine. Meanwhile, Seizu and Yuzi discovered that all the paths ahead were deliberately blocked with obstacles. Seizu quickly returned to report to Sanada, informing him that the only remaining route was by sea. The group was suddenly discovered and attacked by Masamune. He wanted to seize Izanami and her hairpin while also eliminating Sanada per Iyasu's orders. However, with the warriors still present, Masamune's soldiers stood no chance of even touching Sanada. The warriors then showcased their abilities while Sanada retreated first. Rokaru followed to protect Sanada, but soon, the entire group was forced toward a coastal area. Masamune's soldiers were closing in, leaving the group with almost no way to escape. Seizu then stepped up to fight against two of Masamune's subordinates. After spending time with the group, he decided to abandon the title of Phantom of the Iga clan and officially become a warrior under Sanada. Yuzi then charged in, unleashing a gust of wind to attack. Seeing that his soldiers were ineffective, Masamune decided to take matters into his own hands. But just then, a warship appeared behind Sanada's group. At first, they thought it was Masamune's reinforcements, but it turned out to be Juzu and another person on board. The ship drove Masamune's troops away and quickly took Sanada's group aboard. Here, they met the captain of the ship, Jinpachi. He was initially interested in Yuzi, mistaking him for a woman, but upon realizing Yuzi was a man, he immediately lost interest. Besides women, Jinpachi also had a great love for alcohol. He then asked where the beauty of the group was, as Juzu had described. Izanami stepped forward to introduce herself, but Jinpachi merely saw her as a child. Miyoshi, feeling that his sister had been insulted, was about to start a fight, but Jinpachi effortlessly blocked his iron club with his bare hands. Immediately after, Jinpachi unleashed a lightning strike, quickly knocking Miyoshi down. He then stated that they seemed to be misunderstanding the situation. He had never agreed to let them stay on his ship. Thus, Jinpachi wanted to test whether they were worthy of remaining. He threw a barrel of alcohol toward them, and Seizu swiftly sliced it in half. Jinpachi then revealed his challenge. They had to drink all the alcohol. Sanada instantly agreed, prompting Seizu to protest, as it would take a lifetime to finish such a massive amount. Both Benmaru and Izanami wanted to try, but Jinpachi deemed them too young to drink. Meanwhile, Anna, unaware of what was happening with the group, simply hoped they wouldn't encounter too many obstacles. Sarutobi, however, believed they would handle everything on their own. Back on the ship, Yuzi was eagerly drinking with Jinpachi, while Sanada kept drinking without showing any signs of intoxication. Rokiru drank moderately, but Izanami, after just a small amount, was already completely drunk. Seizu, being immune to alcohol, remained unaffected no matter how much he drank. Juzu later approached Seizu for a chat, and Seizu was curious as to why Juzu was there. Juzu explained that he had been traveling in search of a new gun when he came across Jinpachi. He then sought to join the crew, and after a drinking session with Jinpachi, the captain had recognized him as a sworn brother. Jinpachi even gave Juzu a gun, but in return, Juzu decided to stay and help out for a while as repayment. Thanks to this, he was able to rescue Sanada's group in time. Juzu asked what had happened to the group, but Seizu suggested that he ask Sanada directly. He also remarked that he had never met anyone like Sanada, someone who could stand tall and challenge the enemy even when cornered. That night, Jinpachi and Sanada had a private conversation. Jinpachi expressed that he disliked the constraints of being a lord and had no desire to serve anyone. He only wanted freedom. Lords like Sanada were bound to their territories, but he wasn't. He could go anywhere he pleased, independent of anyone else. Free to roam the seas and skies, unburdened by taxes, civil wars, or power struggles, enjoying life was the true pleasure of a pirate. Sanada, however, argued that a truly free person would remain free no matter where they went. Choosing whom to serve and where to live, if it was a decision made by the heart, was also a form of freedom. Jinpachi assumed that Sanada must have paid his followers, but Sanada revealed that he hadn't hired anyone. They all followed him by their own choice. The next morning, the group returned to the mainland, and Jinpachi decided to bid farewell to his crew to travel with Sanada for a while. Sanada realized that he had now gathered all 10 warriors, and it was time for them to return together. Jinpachi was eager to see what the well-endowed woman that Juzu had mentioned looked like. Not long after, the group reunited with Sarutobi. He was surprised that 2 new members had already joined in such a short time. However, what excited Sarutobi the most was Jinpachi's Black Panther. When the group asked where Anna was, Sarutobi explained that she had gone somewhere, so Sanada decided to postpone their gathering until the next day, now that he had assembled all 10 warriors. That evening, Anna returned to meet Izanami. Since Izanami hadn't brought her any gifts, Anna forced her to recount everything about their journey. Meanwhile, Seizu secretly approached Sanada to ask why he had gathered all 10 warriors. Sanada revealed that his true ambition was to rule the world. According to ancient legends, 10 primordial elements created all things, and the one who controlled all 10 elements could reshape the world. These elements corresponded to each of the 10 warriors. Earth, Miyoshi, metal, Juzu, lightning, Jinpachi, fire, Benmaru, with his ability to create explosives, wind, Yuzi, wood, Sarutobi, ice, Anna, water, Rokiru, whose ability to record everything was like the reflection of water. At that moment, Anna unexpectedly entered Rokiru's room to assassinate him, leaving him confused about her intentions. Meanwhile, Seizu asked Sanada which element he represented. Sanada suddenly declared that Seizu was the element of light, while Izanami was darkness. Seizu initially found it ridiculous, but upon recalling Izanami's abilities, he began to take the matter seriously. At the same time, Rokiru realized that Anna was targeting his divine eye, which had the power to remember everything. Anna successfully pinned him to the floor and was about to take his eye. However, Rokiru chose to destroy it rather than let anyone else have it. Anna was then discovered and attacked by Sarutobi. She had to kick him away upon realizing that others were also arriving. She ran outside but was intercepted by Sarutobi, forcing her to throw 2 kunai to cast a spell and freeze him. Just as she was about to finish Sarutobi off, Seizu appeared and asked what she was trying to do. Anna stated that, as a ninja, she could never truly have a place to call home. Meanwhile, Rokiru had been poisoned by Anna's kunai. Sanada immediately ordered someone to retrieve medicine so he could treat Rokiru. Anna then suddenly stabbed Sarutobi with her sword and used the moment to escape. Rokiru, now safe, apologized to Sanada for losing his divine eye, but Sanada assured him that it wasn't his fault. Sanada believed that Rokiru had kept his promise, and that was why he had lost his eye. However, he blamed Rokiru for being too sincere toward him. At that moment, Seizu was in close pursuit of Anna, demanding to know what she was trying to achieve. Anna told him that, even now, he still refused to see the truth. Seizu then blocked her from drawing her sword and asked who she was truly serving. Anna claimed that it no longer mattered, but Seizu regretted not realizing sooner that she was a spy. The two then drew their swords and fought. In a swift exchange, Seizu landed a punch that sent Anna tumbling. Realizing she couldn't match Seizu's speed, she tried to flee. However, Seizu quickly closed the distance and knocked her into a river. Anna used her magic to freeze the water and attack Seizu, but he easily broke through, stating that he only needed to shatter the ice before it fully solidified. He then pinned Anna down and demanded to know who her master was. Anna continued to resist, but Seizu countered all her moves. Yusi, watching from nearby, didn't dare to intervene. Anna then manipulated water from another part of the river to send ice shards flying towards Seizu. He had to block the attack, giving Anna a chance to escape. Meanwhile, Sarutobi returned to apologize to Sanada for hesitating and losing to Anna. However, Sanada didn't blame him, as he had at least tried to protect Rokiru. For now, their priority was to uncover the true mastermind behind Anna. Jinpachi's Black Panther then approached Sarutobi to comfort him. Sanada at this moment realized that Seizu had returned, which meant that Anna had escaped. He informed Seizu about Rokiru's condition and believed that it was time to reveal everything to everyone. Jinpachi had just returned and sensed that something had happened. Sanada thought that Jinpachi could give Seizu a more objective perspective on why he represented light, while Izanami embodied darkness. After recounting how each warrior symbolized one of the 10 primordial elements that shaped all things, Sanada explained that these elements existed in a state of balance through mutual reinforcement and counteraction. However, as Jinpachi interpreted it, that balance was deteriorating, and the gathering of the warriors was meant to help light suppress the growing darkness. Meanwhile, Izanami was being consumed by darkness, devastated by Anna's betrayal. Benmaru and Miyoshi approached to console her, urging her not to grieve too much, fearing that her sorrow would further strengthen the darkness. Sanada was convinced that the people at the temple had previously recognized the terrifying power Izanami possessed. When she shed tears, darkness from the depths of the underworld was summoned. He believed that Izanami could transform her grief into strength, becoming a goddess of death capable of claiming thousands of lives in an instant. The hairpin she wore was likely intended to suppress that immense power. At that moment, Seizu stepped out and saw that Izanami had heard everything. The next morning, all the warriors had learned about Izanami's secret. Miyoshi wanted to comfort his sister, but Sanada insisted that Seizu was already taking care of it, and that only light could subdue darkness. Miyoshi then meditated beneath a waterfall, contemplating if there was any way he could help his sister. Meanwhile, Sanada received unexpected guests, two fellow lords, Ishida and Nea. Surprised by their visit, he asked why they had come. They explained that since Sanada had not responded to their letters, they decided to meet him in person. Sanada, unimpressed, told them to speak quickly and leave. However, how long the conversation would last depended entirely on him. Elsewhere, Seizu was unsure how to talk to Izanami when, out of nowhere, kunai knives flew toward him. He chased after the attacker and was shocked to encounter Hanzu again. Seizu had assumed that Hanzu had perished beneath the temple ruins, but Hanzu had seemingly risen from the grave to hunt him down. Hanzu acknowledged Seizu's efforts in protecting Izanami thus far, but lamented missing the chance to take Rokuru's mystical eye. Seizu realized that Hanzu was the one who had manipulated Anna. Hanzu declared that before seizing Izanami, he would first annihilate all of Sanada's warriors. He then revealed that an attack was already underway. The 5 great ninjas of the Iga clan had begun their mission to exterminate the Sanada warriors. Seizu knew the fearsome power of these 5 legendary ninjas. Hanzu taunted him, claiming that the warriors were nothing compared to the 5 great ninjas. At that moment, Sotobai and Juzu encountered the first of the 5, a woman who introduced herself as Kaio, the Queen of Insects. Sotobai had heard of the 5 great ninjas before. Kaio explained that their mission was to eliminate Sanada's warriors, but she also sought revenge against them for the death of her older sister, Okatsu. Meanwhile, Miyoshi, lost in thought, had an epiphany. He realized that all he needed to do was trust Izanami and serve her as a goddess. Just then, a massive boulder fell directly onto his head. A girl leaped down from above, extending her arms to grab Benmaru. She asked him if he was one of Sanada's warriors, but Miyoshi shattered the boulder and forced her to retreat, pulling Benmaru back to safety. The girl introduced herself as Byakugan, one of the 5 great ninjas. She then kicked a rock toward Miyoshi, but he easily smashed it. He warned her to leave, or he would show her no mercy. However, Byakugan effortlessly shattered another boulder and scoffed, claiming that she was far stronger than Miyoshi and that his threats meant nothing. Miyoshi then realized that the other warriors were being targeted as well and grew worried about Izanami's safety. He tried to rush to her aid, but Byakugan blocked his path. At this moment, the 2 lords wanted to inform Sanada that Ieyasu was becoming increasingly arrogant. He had blatantly accused another lord of treason just to seize his territory. The other lords were also growing resentful of Ieyasu, as his crimes could not be fully recorded on just a single piece of paper. Ishida had assembled his own army and was seeking more allies. However, Sanada believed that the cunning old fox must have planned everything carefully before acting so soon. Ishida, frustrated, wished for enough power to overturn the situation, but Sanada warned that ultimate power would only bring disaster. Meanwhile, Seizu had begun his battle with Hanzu. Hanzu noticed that Seizu had grown stronger since their last encounter at the temple. As Izanami arrived, Hanzu quickly bound her to a tree, stating that he would release her only after he had finished playing with and disposing of Seizu. Desperate, Izanami pleaded with them to take her but spare everyone else. However, Hanzu refused, stating that he could take Izanami anytime he wished. At the same time, Juzu and Sotobai were struggling in their fight. Swarms of insects buzzed around, obstructing their vision and making so much noise that they couldn't pinpoint their enemy's location. Suddenly, a giant spider emerged from underground, forcing them to evade. Sotobai once again confronted Kaio and attempted to attack, but her insects prevented him from getting close. She then performed a ritual and summoned a massive egg, which hatched into a swarm of giant mantises. Juzu fired a cannonball to destroy some of them, allowing Sotobai to rush at Kaio. However, she caught him off guard with a kiss, injecting poisonous insects into his body. Juzu attempted to assist, but suddenly realized that his legs had been bitten by ants. The excruciating pain left him unable to move, and the giant mantises swarmed in. Senpai quickly took care of the mantises to protect him. Just then, the giant spider resurfaced. After taking several bullets from Juzu, it suddenly vanished. Moments later, Juzu was overwhelmed and collapsed as countless insects bit into him. Meanwhile, Miyoshi was trying to get Benmaru to safety, but continuous rock attacks blocked their escape route. Miyoshi was baffled by how a seemingly delicate woman possessed such overwhelming strength. Byakugan then taunted him, saying that Izanami had likely become nothing more than a plaything for their leader by now. Enraged, Miyoshi decided to stay and fight. Byakugan stepped forward for a one-on-one duel, finally revealing her true form, a muscular and powerful body. The two engaged in a fierce exchange of blows, dodging and countering each other's attacks. Eventually, Byakugan landed a powerful punch on Miyoshi, disrupting his rhythm and leaving him open for a flurry of follow-up strikes. When Benmaru tried to assist, she knocked him out cold with a thrown rock. Miyoshi was utterly defeated, realizing that his loss was due to his lack of faith. At the same time, Seizu was beginning to lose his battle against Hanzu. Hanzu continuously injured him, causing Izanami to fall deeper into despair, awakening her dark power. As her energy surged, Hanzu remarked that her grief was activating the power within her hairpin. Seizu made a desperate charge, but Hanzu easily predicted his movements and countered him. Hanzu then blamed Izanami for everything that had happened, claiming that if not for protecting her, Seizu wouldn't have been injured. Not just Seizu, but all of the warriors had likely already been defeated by his forces, and it was all because of her. Elsewhere, Yuri was causing mischief in town when he suddenly spotted a fox and chased after it. Unknowingly, he wandered into an alley and was abruptly transported into another realm. When he regained consciousness, he found himself living as a noble lady in an aristocratic family. To his surprise, Seizu was now his personal attendant. Strangely, Yuzi truly believed she was part of this dreamlike reality. She openly expressed her dislike for the other nobles, as they despised his red hair and tattoos. However, when he felt Seizu's touch on his arm, something within him stirred, though he couldn't quite understand what it was. Before he could figure it out, a servant arrived to remind him to choose an outfit for the evening banquet. Uninterested in attending, Yuri tried to refuse, but this version of Seizu coaxed him with enticing words, promising to grant him a wish once the banquet was over. At the banquet, Yuri quickly realized he didn't belong in this place. It was far too dull. None of the people here could possibly be his destined one. Moreover, he felt as if he had forgotten something important when he overheard some nobles speaking ill of her behind his back. He immediately confronted them with harsh words. Not long after, Seizu arrived to escort him back, and he left the gathering alongside his attendant. Later, as he soaked in the bath prepared by Seizu, he pondered about his fated person, feeling that they were much closer than he had imagined. He cherished this peaceful life and wished he could stay here forever. Meanwhile, in reality, Seizu was still being toyed with by Hanzu. Hanzu wasn't in a hurry to finish the fight. Instead, he wanted to torment Seizu slowly. Despite Seizu's relentless attacks, Hanzu effortlessly dodged each one with ease. Back in Yujai's illusion, he finally realized that this wasn't the Seizu he desired. The one she truly sought was a ruthless, cold-eyed warrior drenched in the scent of blood. At that moment, he awakened from the dream and discovered the one manipulating his mind. Without hesitation, he unleashed a powerful gust of wind and bound his neck with chains. He smirked, commenting that Yuzi seemed uninterested in happiness and instead craved suffering. If that was the case, he would gladly grant his that experience. Elsewhere, Jinpachi was quietly fishing when his panther companion suddenly ran off. Moments later, the water beneath him froze, and he finally encountered Anna, the person he had been waiting for. Without wasting words, Anna launched an immediate attack. Jinpachi, thinking he could handle her easily, swiftly grabbed his spear and counterattacked. However, Anna conjured towering ice spikes, trapping him within. She declared that Jinpachi must die simply because he was a warrior. Jinpachi, however, denied being a warrior, claiming that was merely Sanada's decision, not his own. But Anna didn't care and continued her relentless assault. Jinpachi skillfully blocked her strikes, forcing her to draw her sword and engage him in close combat. He noticed that her icy heart was beginning to thaw, though she refused to believe it. Honor revealed her tragic past. She had lost her mother and had struggled to survive while searching for the royal heirloom that would allow her to return home. However, Hanzu had taken possession of it and coerced her into servitude. Since then, she had never hesitated in her mission. Now, with her goal within reach, she had long discarded her emotions. Yet, ever since encountering Sanada and his group, she found herself slowly changing. Still, she insisted that she had no place to belong, convinced that everything was just an illusion. Meanwhile, Seizu was sustaining heavier injuries by the second. Anna turned to him and Izanami, declaring that she had never once enjoyed the so-called family they had built. It was all a disgusting farce. Their make-believe familial bonds only sickened her. As Seizu tried to comfort Izanami, he was stabbed once again by Hanzu. At the same time, Jinpachi let his guard down and was stabbed in the leg by Anna. He swiftly switched his spear for nunchaku and attempted to retreat, but Anna froze the ground, causing him to slip and fall. She coldly declared that she would not show mercy this time. However, Jinpachi argued that he couldn't die just yet. He hadn't fully experienced freedom. He believed Anna, too, longed for freedom just as much as he did. Enraged, Anna encased him in ice completely. She had sacrificed her own freedom for power, and power was the only thing she needed. Meanwhile, Izanami, watching Seizu suffer for her sake, realized how utterly useless she was. She couldn't fight, and because of that, everyone else was suffering. Suddenly, a mysterious voice asked if she desired power. If so, she only needed to remove the hairpin. With newfound resolve, she disintegrated her restraints and reached for the hairpin, removing it. Instantly, the sky darkened and the sun was obscured. Izanami's true power awakened. The goddess of darkness had arrived. Without hesitation, she conjured a massive sphere of darkness and ascended into the sky. From above, she unleashed a relentless barrage of dark orbs across the entire forest. Rokiru, regaining consciousness, was caught in the chaos. Fortunately, Sanada arrived in time to support him. Rokiru urged Sanada to find a way to stop Izanami before she destroyed the entire world. Though Sanada noted that Rokiru was still injured, the latter insisted he couldn't stay idle. He had memorized everything from the secret temple's records, and there was no choice but to act now. Seeing his determination, Sanada agreed to help him. Hanzu, witnessing Izanami's transformation, was utterly shocked. He never expected that she was the goddess of death. Izanami and the goddess of death were still struggling for control over her body. Hanzu believed that by seizing the hairpin, he could manipulate Izanami at will. When Seizu attempted to reclaim it, Hanzu struck him down, mocking him for his weakness. He declared that a true ninja should live only for themselves, trusting nothing but their own strength and body. Since Seizu had forgotten this principle, he was no longer worthy of being his opponent. At that moment, Sanada and Rokiru arrived, demanding to know what Hanzu intended to do with Izanami's immense power. Hanzu sneered, asserting that no matter what he planned, he would never waste it as Sanada did. He believed only he was worthy of wielding the power of the goddess of death, whereas weaklings like Sanada were not. To him, Anna was nothing more than a pawn. By exploiting her desire to return home, he had easily manipulated her into serving him. Hearing this, Seizu, enraged, forced himself to rise and fight. He could not tolerate the way Hanzu treated Anna like a mere tool. However, Hanzu once again struck him down, telling him to stay silent and watch. He then lunged forward, intending to use the hairpin to suppress Izanami's power. But as soon as he reached for the sphere of darkness, his hand became stuck. Realizing the danger, he was forced to sever his own arm to escape. However, the sphere's dark tendrils suddenly lashed out, seizing him and dragging him back inside. Rokiru, seeing this, deduced that the only way to stop Izanami was for warriors representing the elements to intervene. Determined, he prepared to sacrifice himself, but Seizu stopped him, insisting that he would take his place. Ignoring Sanada's protests, Seizu charged forward, determined to reach the sphere. Though he never believed in fate, he admitted that because of Izanami, he had come to understand the bond of comradeship. As he reached the sphere, it suddenly opened and pulled him inside, carrying him skyward. Meanwhile, Miyoshi recalled his past conflict with the temple's head priest, which led to his departure. At the time, Izanami had asked where he was going, but he had been unable to answer. He had promised to return for her, yet when he did, he found the temple in ruins. Upon learning that she was still alive, he had searched tirelessly for her. Now, however, his faith had crumbled. Benmaru arrived, calling out to Miyoshi and urging him to fight on. He encouraged him and even placed a bomb in his hand to amplify his power. Meanwhile, the swarms of insects, now affected by the darkness, became vulnerable. Seizing the opportunity, Juzu and Sarutobi launched a counterattack. Sarutobi ensnared their foe with poisonous vines, causing her immense pain, while Juzu mercifully ended her suffering with a swift strike. Yuri, on the other hand, reveled in the pain he had experienced moments ago. However, he swiftly conjured a gust of wind to blind the ninja before effortlessly dispatching him. As Anna attempted to retrieve her sword to leave, Jinpachi shocked her through the blade, sending her flying. Paralyzed and unable to continue fighting, Anna found herself in a stalemate with Jinpachi. He declared the match a draw and admitted that, despite her icy exterior, she was still as warm as any other human. Inside the sphere, Seizu realized he was still alive thanks to the hairpin. He finally reunited with Izanami, who confessed her fear. She wanted power to protect everyone, but the goddess of death sought only destruction. She was terrified of losing herself to the darkness. She urged Seizu to leave, not wanting to burden him further. But Seizu reassured her. He told her that as long as she still had emotions, she was still human, not a monster. He refused to leave her behind. She was one of the 10 Braves, and together they would return. With his words, he successfully brought Izanami back. Sanada, seeing this, affirmed that Seizu was indeed the embodiment of light. As Izanami awoke, Sanada embraced her, telling her to return with them. With everyone safe, Seizu returned the hairpin to Izanami. Meanwhile, Anna, realizing that the treasure she had been chasing for so long was nothing more than a fake, could only laugh bitterly at the cruel irony of fate. Jinpachi approached Anna and urged her to return with him. However, she hesitated, believing that Sanada would never forgive a traitor like her. But Jinpachi reassured her, saying that now she had no more burdens, she was finally a free person, able to start anew. Meanwhile, Ishida and Nea decided to leave, determined to refine their strategy to defeat Ieyasu. Masamune, having realized that Izanami was the true treasure all along, made an unexpected decision he would temporarily ally with Ishida's faction to first take down Ieyasu before dealing with future matters. Later, Seizu asked Sanada whether he had gathered them together because he had foreseen the catastrophe that had just unfolded. Sanada admitted that he hadn't anticipated anything that far ahead. Just then, Izanami came running in with a mountain of sweets, excitedly inviting everyone to eat. Seizu grumbled that she had made far too many, but Miyoshi immediately stepped in, once again scolding him for bullying his little sister. Sanada then suggested that they should choose a leader for the 10 Braves. Juzu declined the position, as he often traveled far away. Sarutobi also refused and instead pushed the responsibility onto Seizu. At that moment, Yusi appeared, challenging Seizu to a fight, while Anna and Jinpachi chose to stay out of the commotion. And with that, the story came to an end,